Problem is, it's not a priority. We've shifted it away. Food is for so long throughout so many cultures been such a central part of their existence. And now it's just something we try to get through as fast as we can, eat and go.
Well, part of that preparation was growing it.
It's exactly
right. That's what they existed to grow the vegetables to eat and to sell. And
that's exactly
they also
right.
had more family members typically to feed.
Yeah.
I mean, people now are the 2.2 kids or whatever, and
Yeah.
back then they had 10 or 12. So.
Yeah, they had some people to work. They had 4-year-old kids to pick cotton for. There's researchers call places with high levels of, high concentrations of supercenturions. They call them blue zones, or sociologists do. And supercenturions are people who live over 100 years old. Okay. Now, there's this place, and it's known as the highest concentration of supercenturions in the entire world, and it's on the island of Okinawa, just off of Japan, in a region called Okime, Okinawa. There, the average life expectancy, not kidding, average, is between 95 and 100 years old. Okay? They have the largest concentration of people who live over 100 years old. And you think, well, okay, that's a quarter century more than our life expectancy is. That's 25 more years. Can you imagine the generations of your grandkids and great-grandkids that you could see come about in 25 more years? That's an amazing thing to me. So I started studying more about this, and they have a healthcare system that focuses on prevention. They work well into their old age, and they stay active well into their old age. I saw this video with this lady right here, 90 years old. She works on a citrus farm with other 80 and 90-year-old ladies. Started when she was 20 years old on this farm. Says she literally can't remember a day being sick in 70 years that she's worked on that farm. She climbs, I'm not kidding you, I saw the video. She climbs up into trees without ladders and picks citrus fruits for 8 hours a day. She's 90 years old, okay? And she is living active and happy, and nothing is slowing her down. When we stop moving and things start kind of breaking down, but they stay active. And it's just really interesting thing to me. They eat mostly plants in a big way, mostly plants. They have lower sodium and fat and sugar intake. But the crazy thing is foreign as that sounds to us, that's what we were intended to live like. That's what our species was made to live like. And don't get me wrong, I like a steak just as much as the next guy. I mean, it's a weakness of mine. But until about a century ago, this was a rare delicacy. It really was. You didn't eat this that often. Our species mostly ate plants, and we're omnivores and we can eat these, but this is a rare delicacy. It's only recently that it's become so cheap. I mean, to kill a cow was a big deal back then. Now it's so cheap that we can do this all the time. Chicken even was the same way.
It's free if you can eat it in an hour.
That's exactly right. 72 ounces of it, as much as a phone book. So, we've made a big change from how our species is intended to live. And we've taken these molecules of grain, and we've turned them into crazy things that our grandmothers would have no idea what they even are, all right? One of the other tips that Philan will give you is that if a food is incapable of rotting, don't eat it. I mean, that's the truth. The food that's good for you is the food that will actually rot, because that means it has nutrients in it. Bacteria and pests don't want food that doesn't have nutrients in it. There's no point to it. And so that's kind of how we've deviated from that system. Scientists say that the life expectancy is based on 2 factors. Okay, and I started doing this research on what life expectancy was all about. One is genetics. Obviously, genetics plays a portion of that. 20 to 30% of what decides how long you're going to live is based on genetics. The other one is lifestyle choices. 70 to 80% of what determines how long you live comes from the choices that you make in your life. All right? Now, somebody's told me once, or I read somewhere, that discipline is just being able to choose, is just choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And so you have to ask yourself, do I want to live a long and a healthy and an active life where I can be with my grandkids and my great-grandkids, and I can share time with my family and live like this? Or do I want this giant burger that's sitting in front of me right now? And it's choosing between what you want now and what you want most, and that's the definition of discipline. And so I kind of want to give an example here of deviating from what is intended for a specific species. Whenever you have a monoculture, a monoculture type farm like this, that means they just plant one type of plant, you see the use of a lot more pesticides and a lot more fertilizers being used. But when you see places that are more biologically diverse, how things would typically normally be in nature, there are hardly any pesticides or fertilizers that need to be used. One of the reasons for that is that this plant has some nutrients that this plant has a deficiency of, and it leaves those in the soil, and then this plant soaks those up, it grows better, it gives it the ability to fight off pests. But when you stray away from what was intended for a particular species, you start having to use pesticides and fertilizers, and that's the same that's true with us. In nature, health is the default. That's the way when we came out of the womb. That's the way that most of us were born. And healthy is the default. To get away from that, it's because of something that we've done. It's not that we're trying to attain health. It's that we're trying to just live like we were meant to live. You see what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what I wanted to show you with that. This is a lady named Karen O'Day, and we're almost done here. But Karen O'Day is a scientist and a researcher that has been, for many years, very far ahead of her time as far as diabetes research goes. She did a study in the 1980s where she went to a town called Derby, Australia, and she found a group of 10 Aborigine Australian men that had moved from the bush 10 or 15 years earlier into a town, had started consuming more of a westernized diet, what we call a Western diet, and they were all overweight, they all had high levels of triglycerides, they all had type 2 diabetes, okay? And what she did was she took their blood and she measured it, and then she talked with them, and they agreed to go on this experiment with her. And so they drove back out to the bush, to their homeland where they grew up. They still had the knowledge of how to hunt and gather and that sort of stuff. And for 7 weeks they spent out there only eating the foods that they could catch or that they could obtain there. The goal was to not bring any food from the store or any beverages from their store. And their diet when they were back in town consisted mostly of processed grains, of carbonated and alcoholic beverages, of fatty meats, and some fruits and vegetables. When they went out there, they split their time of the 7 weeks in between two locations. One was a coastal location, one was more of an inland location. But their diets were things like shellfish, and fresh and saltwater fish, and kangaroo, and bush honey, and witchetty grubs, which are the fatty larvae of some nasty bugs they find in bark, and birds, and a ton of vegetation from out there. But that's what they were used to eating 10 to 15 years prior. Okay? So they went and they did that. Now the amazing thing was the results. After 7 weeks, she drew blood on all of them and performed the tests. They had all lost an average of 19 pounds apiece. Okay? Their triglyceride levels had fallen within normative ranges, and most of the symptoms, the metabolic symptoms that led to their diabetes, had either improved tremendously or normalized completely. So what we've known for a century is that whenever you take a population and you introduce this Western diet, all of a sudden this metabolic syndrome of all these diseases start coming about. But what we didn't know until this experiment is how quickly that the most detrimental effects of the Western diet can be reversed. That these things can be changed in our lives. You know, and I'm not, oh, there's Aborigines. I'm not one.
Are those the actual men?
No, I don't think so. I just typed in Aborigines on Google. You know, I'm not here to push religion or anything like that, but it seems to me the closer we get to eating what God originally made, the healthier it is. Or what I believe that God originally made, the healthier it is. And it's only when man takes those and processes them to the nth degree, and then we start straying away from what our species was intended to do, that we start noticing. So it turns out whoever made all this ended up kind of knowing what he was doing there. But it's not like our choice. We have bad choices to pick from. We're omnivores. We can eat so many things, and there are so many healthy things out there for us to eat. And all of these things are within miles from where you live. It may take you know, a choice to put a little bit more of a priority on your resources or on your time to go do this, but these things are attainable to us. And it's not like we're koala bears that just eucalyptus leaves, that's our only option. No, there's so many things that we could eat that are healthy for us and that we're intended to eat as our species. But what we've chosen is a smorgasbord that looks something more like that. And it's killing us. And so the whole point of wellness is about making choices. The choices that are in front of you, that you have the ability and the power to say, I'm going to live a healthy life. I'm going to live to an old age. I'm going to see my great-grandkids marry. They probably get to do that in Okinawa, I don't know. But you have the choice to say that. And it all boils down to choices. And that 7-week experiment that Karen O'Day did just kind of goes me to show that, you know, you look at, hey, it's just a burger. It's not. It's a choice that you have to make. And if 7 weeks can improve people's results that dramatically, then one meal makes a big difference. One meal makes a very big difference in your life. And so I'm not saying just to ditch everything that you think is delicious or anything like that. But how about making it the exception instead of the rule? You know? How about making it that rare delicacy that people didn't get quite as often? But it's a choice. I mean, you know, I'm just covering the common sense basics here. You know that you can choose to eat the stuff that's more convenient and that maybe tastes a little better, and you know where that's going to lead. I mean, it's delayed gratification. You think, you know, hey, that's a long ways down the road. But I promise you, if this is your choice, then you're going to be there. You're going to end up that way. And so the choices you make today have a big, big effect. That's what I've learned. That's what's helped me to become more healthier. And I'm still working on it, and I still struggle on it. And it's by far not perfect at any of this, and I'm still learning a lot. But just knowing some of this stuff has really opened my eyes to make me think, man, I don't want to be there. I don't want to live like that. I look at my son laying his head down at the bed at night, and I think, man, I want to spend time with his kids too. I want to hear how he feels when he has a son or a daughter. And to me, that's a big deal. And that's a bigger deal to me than what my food choices are for one particular meal. So we're going to give you some tips that can help. Really what it all boils down to, though, is that you've got to have the intrinsic motivation to do this, because we can give you all the tips in the world, but there's no magic diet pill. There really isn't. There's no such thing as that. It just takes making healthy choices and living and eating and moving like our species was intended. And that's really what wellness is all about, is making choices. So that's the end of my presentation. And like I said, on the next Lunch and Learns, we'll go into more practical details and kind of break this down some more. And we'll have experts come in, nutritional experts come in the next couple months and talk to you about this sort of stuff. But I wanted to start you out just kind of as the overarching definition of wellness, why we are where we are, and you know, and Earl Butts. So if you guys have any questions, be sure and talk with Derek or I. And thank you so much for coming to this and for being a part of this. And we'll make sure you get your points and all that sort of stuff. So
Thanks for allowing
Let's